Hello, folks. My name is Andreas Borgeas. I have the honor of being a California state senator and representing 11 counties in California, one of which is Fresno County, home to a significant Armenian population with a strong legacy and a lot of history. I have a lot of emails and I've gotten a lot of texts and voicemails, folks trying to figure out what exactly is going on in Artsakh. What is the relationship between Armenia and Azerbaijan and Turkey? So I thought this was a wonderful opportunity for me to bring folks together to try to answer these questions. And in many ways, we could call this Artsakh 101, if you will. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce a couple of very distinguished guests. First is Robert Avetisyan, who is the permanent representative of the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic to the United States, based in Washington, D.C. Nagorno-Karabakh is also known as Artsakh. He went to Artsakh State and also Tufts University and has been in D.C. for a number of years. We have worked together on a number of Armenian and Artsakh related issues over the years. Also, we have Berj Apkarian, who is the Honorary Consul of Armenia in Fresno, California. And he is the Executive Director of Physician Relations at Community Medical Center. Also, Berj and I have worked together on a number of Armenian and Artsakh related issues over the years. So these are two folks, one based in DC, one based in California, but both of whom have deep links and understandings of what is happening in the region. So without further ado, I'd like to get into some of the questions. As I mentioned, my name is Andreas Borgeas. I am here in my capacity as a member of the Senate Select Committee on Armenia and Artsakh related issues. So there is a number of subcommittees and select committees in the state of California, and I happen to be a member of the Senate Committee on Artsakh and Armenian related issues. So in that official capacity, I thought this would be important that I convey my appreciation of the issue, as well as get into some of the nitty gritty. So with that being said, Robert, if I may call you Robert, as opposed to Mr. Avetisyan, can you give us a quick overview of the origin of the land controversy going back to Stalin and the end of the Soviet Empire?
First and foremost, thank you, Senator, for organizing this. Mr. Apkarian, it's a pleasure to be here, and I think that this is a good opportunity in these troubling times for Armenian people and Artsakh in particular to raise awareness about what's going on here. Well, this is not a territorial question. This has been a question of human rights versus oppression, always, since the day one, right? Artsakh has been part of Armenia since BC, since long BC. It has been mentioned as such by ancient historians, and we are Armenians. We have been part of the Armenian homeland always. And the only, even when divided among different empires, Artsakh has been always majority Armenian. And we are organic and inseparable part of the Armenian civilization and the Armenian homeland. The most latest escalation of the problem of Artsakh as a territorial dispute, as a territorial claim, appeared in 1918 when Azerbaijan for the first time appeared on the political map and claimed Artsakh, along with other Armenian principalities, claimed authority over those. And Armenia, weakened by the Armenian genocide of 1915-1923, was unable to protect and defend Artsakh from becoming a bargaining chip in the big political game. And in 1918, Azerbaijan claims Artsakh. They invade us. They try to suppress us militarily. They fail. There is a situation of no war, no peace. The interim solution have been found until the Soviets came to the region. And the Soviets, when they swallowed the South Caucasus and they established the Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan, that was when the Joseph Stalin, the infamous Soviet dictator, decided to place Artsakh, to cut it from Armenia and place it into Azerbaijan, into the Soviet borders of Azerbaijan. That was one of the demonstrations of the policy of divide and conquer. But it was apparently a time bomb, because Artsakhtsis, they resisted that, such a decision, which is absolutely illegal and illegitimate. We can go through that if we had more time, but I can stand for any word I'm saying. Throughout even the Soviet period, Artsakh has been fighting against that. I mean, we've been appealing before the Soviet authorities to give us back to Armenia because that's how we belong. We are Armenians. Artsakh was 97% Armenian at the time. And it was absolutely artificial to cut us from our mother Armenia and place it somewhere else. But the policy of friendship among nations, like there was zero tolerance towards any sort of national issue, and the situation was always, all our demands were brutally suppressed by the repressive Soviet system. But when the Gorbachev came, it was a guy who kind of brought some fresh air into the Soviet system, and he said that people had more chances to speak openly about the subjects which were previously tabooed. Artsakh, again, in line with the legislation, again appealed for reunification with Armenia. At that time, the Soviet authorities did not react. And a week after the legal and legitimate decision on paper by our Supreme Council of the autonomy, which was created as a sort of compromise for Armenians in the Soviet Azerbaijan, we've seen, just 7 days after that, we've seen a wave of anti-Armenian pogroms in Azerbaijani major towns of Sumgait and other settlements which are hundreds of miles of Artsakh proper. So there was this kind of always a certain attitude towards the Armenians. Artsakh, throughout its years of existence within Soviet Azerbaijan as part of the Soviet Union, was always discriminated politically, economically. They did their best to change the demographic situation in favor of its Azerbaijani minority. They were artificially inviting Armenians out of this region.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
Mr. Avetisyan, I think you hit on something that's important for listeners. And before I forget, I want to make certain that everyone knows that Mr. Avetisyan is calling us from the capital of Artsakh, the city of Stepanakert. So if we happen to lose him because of a loss of electricity or internet connection, our best prayers and wishes go out to you and your comrades in the country. But in terms of Artsakh, geographically, it was included in the former oblast of Azerbaijan. But I think it's important to know that Stalin, by design, had routinely divided up territory for political reasons to make certain there was not too much political and ethnic muscle in any given area that could pose a threat to Moscow. Is that correct?
You're absolutely right. And Armenians, which were a global nation, which were much bigger nation and which much stronger civilization at the time, Armenians always were more pro-human rights and pro-freedom. And we were we were perceived as one of the weak elements when the Soviet Union was forming, and we actually resisted being forced into the Soviet Union. And Azerbaijan, which was artificially created in 1918 as a result of a conspiracy between Turks and Bolsheviks, that was a country which was found as a very useful means to make sure that Armenians don't strengthen enough to threaten or whatever can happen to that part of the Soviet Empire. And actually, I think it is also important to know that Artsakh has never been part of independent Azerbaijan. The only period when Azerbaijan was independent was from 1918 to 1920. It was not recognized by the League of Nations, by the antecedent of the United Nations, as a country, because it didn't have clear borders, it didn't have clear populations. They actually were referred to, the population of Azerbaijan until 1936 was referred to as just Caucasian Tatars or Caucasian Muslims. And Stalin gave them that nation the name Azerbaijani. So that's why, that's one of the things that when we say that the preconditions for Artsakh statehood historically, legally, and after so many attacks by Azeris against us, morally, are absolutely firm.
So I want to make certain that we try to encapsulate this for folks that are not necessarily familiar with the location and geography of the Caucasus, is that Armenia is located east of Turkey, west of Azerbaijan, north of Iran, and Artsakh is between Armenia proper and Azerbaijan, a very small enclave located in the middle. And Stalin had created these divisions within the empire and a lot of them were disregarded based on ethnic lines. And so there were these geographic divisions that had no basis in history, had no basis in fact or ethnicity, but for a period of time existed. And now we understand that the Azeris claim Artsakh to be theirs simply because of that small moment in time that Stalin, through the Soviet Empire, acknowledged that this particular enclave was under the auspices of Azerbaijan. But historically, that was just a fabrication. Is that fair to describe it?
Absolutely fair. And it was under the auspices of the Soviet Azerbaijan. So there was Central Moscow who was deciding everything. There was sub-union entity, and we were sub-union entity. So we have never been part of independent Azerbaijan. And actually, Senator, strangely, but Azerbaijan claims not only Artsakh, but the entire Armenia to belong to it. They say that Yerevan is their historic capital, that their strategic goal is to return to Yerevan. So this aggressive expansionism, that's one of the reasons why we see the developments on the battlefield now.
And we're going to get into those details. I'm going to pose the next question to our Honorary Consul. Berj, can you give us a quick overview of the 88 to 94, the 90s war? Just give a quick overview of what actually happened that precipitated the military conflict between Artsakh and Azerbaijan.
Well, good morning, Senator, and Mr. Avetisyan, it's great to see your face. As the Soviet Union was collapsing at the late 1980s, in 1989, the uprising started from the population in that region of Artsakh, where they wanted to declare their independence because, as Mr. Avetisyan indicated, they were under oppressions and pogroms in various regions of Azerbaijan, including Artsakh itself. So because of that struggle, the population started uprising, and then Armenia declared its support for this uprising. And because there was no connection between the enclave and Armenia, the corridor was necessary to bring the two nations back together. So there was a struggle for almost 4 years when our brothers in Artsakh and the Armenians forces created that bridge, and Lachin corridor, as we say it, as the earliest lifeline per se that got brought up. And then subsequently, Shushi got liberated and all the other territories, and now all of a sudden Artsakh and Armenia was connected as one nation and one struggle together. Please keep in mind that although Armenia was supporting and became the guarantor of the Artsakh, they never recognized Artsakh, and there was a political reason behind it. But because of the winning of the cause was so strong, and the fighting was so powerful from our end, not only we liberated the area, we connected ourselves to Armenia, but we forced Azerbaijan to declare ceasefire because they were losing the war.
And Mr. Apkarian, folks that are listening in the Central Valley would be interested in knowing that some of our folks in our area, from our area, actually went to this territory to fight. I think an easy name to pull out would be Melkonian,
Yes.
and there are others, but they were from Fresno in the Central Valley. They went over to Armenia and to Artsakh to fight on behalf of their Armenian brethren against the Azeris. So there's cemeteries that have tombstones dedicated to folks from the Central Valley that fought and died in that territory.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Senator. As a matter of fact, Mr. Montemelkonian, who is from the Vaisele area, he led a major struggle and the fight to liberate the territories, he played a critical role. In Armenia and in Artsakh, Mr. Melkonian is considered a hero for our nation in defense of our freedom and our peaceful existence in that region.
So, Mr. Apkarian, what came of the 90s war? You had indicated that the Armenians and those that were fighting on behalf of Artsakh were able to declare that Artsakh is separate from Azerbaijan, and then that was in 1994?
Yes. With 1994, well, during the war, not only we connected Artsakh to Armenia, but also we created a buffer zone between the enclave and Azerbaijan itself, so that that territory becomes protected per se.
All right. So, Mr. Avetisyan, can you describe what the truce was and what the Minsk group is? The Minsk group.
Yes. Well, the Artsakh conflict, the Azerbaijan-Artsakh conflict has two phases, one military and one political. Right. So the political side it started in 1988 with legal demands, but when Azerbaijan attacked Artsakh, there was a need for self-organization. And when we looked into the constitution, we saw that reunification with Armenia required Moscow's okay. So we went with the acting legislation, just the same legislation which gave sovereignty to all the post-Soviet states, and we legally proclaimed a republic. In response to that, Azerbaijan launched its full-scale war. And we didn't have land connection with Armenia, not because Artsakh was small, no, because Artsakh is much bigger. It is even bigger what is under our administration now. It was 2.5 times bigger than the mountainous oblast, because only the mountainous part of Artsakh was included as autonomy. So initially, Artsakh had land connection, and this is not what Mr. Apkarian is calling a buffer zone. No, this is most of the territory of Artsakh. So we don't have any reservation that we belong to this land, that this is our land, and we've been here for millennia, except for the tough period during the Armenian genocide and the Soviet period. Since 1992, the United States, Russia, and France have been actively involved in this, in the negotiation process, because the military defeats of Azerbaijan kind of raised the question that there should be some political solution. Azerbaijan couldn't do it on the battlefield. They couldn't suppress us. 9 million strong Azerbaijan couldn't suppress 150,000 Armenians because, well, for various reasons. Of course, when we reconnected with Armenia, we began to breathe, and the humanitarian corridor allowed us to take out at least civilian population from the shellings. But since 1992, the international community has been paying more attention to this. There is a Minsk process. Minsk is the capital of Belarus. It is within the OSCE format, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. It is called Minsk process because there was a special meeting to take place in Minsk. It didn't happen, but the process assumed the name from then on. It is co-chaired, so there are 11 members of the Minsk group, and there is 3 permanent co-chairs, which is United States, Russia, and France. And they've been implementing this, what they call a shuttle diplomacy. They travel from the capital to capital, from Yerevan.
Can you repeat, Mr. Avetisyan, the members of the Minsk group? There's Russia, United States, France, and the parties involved.
They are the co-chairs. They are the main co-chairs, the main mediating countries. But there is also 8 other countries which are members of the Minsk group. But really, Minsk group co-chairs are the countries which are actively involved in the settlement process. So they've been taking the messages from one capital to another, from Yerevan to Baku and to Stepanakert, to make sure that they create a common ground for that. And throughout the years, they've come up with a set of proposals, which was acceptable or not acceptable for either of the sides. But the general understanding is that as of now, they've come up with a set of proposals which implies self-determination for Artsakh, also territorial demarcation with Azerbaijan, and the humanitarian aspect, like the return of Armenian refugees to Azerbaijan, Azerbaijanis to Artsakh, etc., etc. But with this level of hatred and renewed war, what we see these days from Azerbaijan, and now backed by Turkey and mercenaries from the Middle East, I don't think that it's a tangible thing, or it will be utopia to believe that the solution based on that is somewhere near.
Interesting. So allow me to kind of provide a synopsis and correct me if I'm mistaken. So what we have here is we had an enclave that was historically but artificially brought into the Azeri territory under the Soviet Empire. Upon the disillusionment of the Soviet Empire, there was conflict whereby ethnic Armenians fought for independence from Azerbaijan and achieved it between 1988 and 1994. They achieved victory.
Yes.
There was a truce between Armenia, Artsakh, and Azerbaijan, and the group that intended to mediate so that this area did not engulf in further conflict was called the Minsk Group, made up of Russia, the United States, France, and then the participants in the region. So those efforts have continued since 1994, but nothing tangible has come from them that we've seen to date. But Artsakh is a de facto state. And when I say a de facto state, you are the permanent representative of Artsakh in Washington, D.C. Artsakh has a parliament, it has a president, it has representation in other parts of the world, and you have a capital in Stepanakert. So by and large, you are a functioning state by all the metrics except international recognition, which gets me to the point of how you and I have worked together in the past, as well as with Mr. Apkarian. And in the interest of disclosure, I have to admit that my family is Greek. Greeks are obviously very close with Armenians. And my wife is, her family is Greek Armenian. So I've been involved in Armenian related issues. Fresno County, when I was serving as a county supervisor, became the first county to recognize the independence of Artsakh, and then California recognized the independence of Artsakh through its legislature, and we've had states all over America and countries all over the world. Can you quickly describe what the recognition process has been like, Mr. Avetisyan, to get recognition of Artsakh?
Thank you very much, Senator, and we really appreciate your involvement into our process of democratic state building. We can get to that too, and we very much appreciate it that the Fresno County is among the bravest counties in the United States that have supported our independence. The key is the recognition here. I mean, we have provided we proclaimed independence, we fought for it on the battlefield, and the key task now is to make the world to recognize that independence. So we are independent. We've been living as such since 1991, when we proclaimed independence from the Soviet Union and the Soviet Azerbaijan in particular. From the day one, even during integration, we've been building our state with the vision which was at the core of our nation liberation movement. We are moving towards a democracy, and with every round of elections, we are registering progress, and our elections always are praised as free and transparent by hundreds of international observers, including from the United States and major democracies around the globe. Our independence doesn't depend on Azerbaijan. Our security depends on Azerbaijan. Our independence depends on our ability to build the lives in the manner that we want it to be, right? If we didn't fail our test for independence so far, if we are strong as a country, if we are developing as an economy, if we are expanding in numbers as a population, if we are developing the entire territory of the Republic of Artsakh, if we are playing our constructive role in providing regional security, meaning that we have capable armed forces, I think those are the major implications of a state that this is really a state that deserves to be recognized as such. Because in those, we are much stronger than many countries in the world. 9 states.
So how many states in the United States have already recognized Artsakh?
9 states so far, but as they say, the most difficult thing is to train to move, and that recognition is a part of the decentralized cooperation our state is trying to establish with the rest of the civilized world. We know that there is a lot of stuff which can affect daily life of people, which can strengthen human rights, strengthen democracy, strengthen economic potential of our country without the full or international or just the comprehensive recognition or seat at the United Nations. But for the security reasons, of course, it is very important for us that Artsakh is recognized as independent, which we think will allow to move this process from the battlefield, from occasional flare-ups, into the solely political and diplomatic means, which will save the region. And every big guy who has interest in the region, they will only benefit from it.
Well, I have to admit, you know, I've been to Armenia 4 or 5 times. I've been to Artsakh, I think 4 times, twice as an official political observer of elections. And what I have seen, that the elections were conducted transparently, they were conducted honestly, and with a rate of participation that frankly embarrasses us in America. I mean, I think Artsakh had something like over 90% participation in their elections. And historically, either in California or nationally, we are much less than that. So that was a refresher for me on the importance that Artsakh is a democratic state in the region. Azerbaijan obviously is not. Turkey, of course, pretends to be. And further south, we could go into that some other caption. Let me change over to Mr. Apkarian. Mr. Apkarian, you are the Honorary Consul of Armenia in Fresno. Fresno is not exactly Los Angeles, San Francisco, or Washington, D.C. Can you tell us a little bit why it was important for Armenia to establish a diplomatic station in the heart of the Central Valley and your role in it?
Senator, I think you bear a major responsibility and gratitude in establishing that post. As a matter of fact, the senator in his prior role in the city and the county of Fresno, you were the most ambitious individual who recognized the large number of Armenian community in the region and the potential of establishing even closer relationship between American Armenian community and the Republic of Armenia. So much gratitude to you for your efforts and for your taking the initiative, working with the Consul General, Mr. Grigor Hovanesyan at that time, and brought the issue to him and saying, you know, we have a large Armenian community in the region. Why are we not tapping into that resource, culture, potential, economic growth, cultural ties? I feel myself being very fortunate, and I'm grateful to you, to the leadership of Republic of Armenia, and to our community itself in terms of coming together since 2014 and established the flag of Republic of Armenia in the Central San Joaquin Valley, put it so high so everybody could see and gather around it, and really not support only the Republic of Armenia, but Republic of Artsakh at the same time.
Can you explain, because I've gotten a ton of text messages, what is the difference? How would you easily and quickly describe the difference between Armenia and Artsakh?
They're both the same. We're both Armenians.
There's no difference.
We are Armenians. We're one nation. And Mr. Avetisyan can correct me. We are one nation, but in 2 different territories. And so we come from the same background. There is no, in my mind, there's no difference. We're one nation.
That's helpful. That's helpful for folks to understand that Artsakh and Armenia are the same people. They might have distinguishing governmental features, but they're essentially one version of an extended self. And I think that is helpful for folks that don't have an appreciation for the complexity of the region. Let's move on to the antagonism that we've experienced by the Azeris. And I'll tell you this, when we dealt with Mr. Avetisyan and I, dealt with the recognition of Artsakh as an independent state. The Azeri lobby is no joke. Can you comment on the role of the Azeris and the Azeri lobby in America?
Is it a question to me, Senator?
Yes, Mr. Avetisyan, yes.
Well, lobby, yes, there is a very strong lobby in the United States and across the world. We always say that Azerbaijan is good at exporting two things, oil and corruption. So they pour in their money and they come and try wine and dine and take people to Baku and try to change their perception. They misinform about the real deal and the real situation. But the difference, the main difference is that whatever they do, no matter how much money they can pour into anti-Armenian sentiments, the voice of Mr. Apkarian and the supporters which are behind Artsakh, and we feel that especially in these troubling days, is pretty different. That is a voice of American Armenians. That is a voice of your compatriots who really care about not only Artsakh, but they care about Armenia, and they care about not repetition of the genocide of the 1915. That is the core thing and the core difference between Azerbaijani lobby, and that is why we think that the US legislature should be more receptive towards what is said from their compatriots on various levels, not only on the state level, but also on the federal level, rather than looking for any short-term political benefits or whatever it can be. Lobby is strong, but lobby is eventually ineffective against truth and justice and the facts.
We saw that with Turkey. The Turkish lobby has been notoriously effective for decades. Turkey, as a member of NATO, has put in millions upon millions of dollars to block congressional efforts to recognize the Armenian genocide. Of course, that failed last year, and America, through the legislature, the US legislature, recognized the genocide. If you were to compare the two lobbying efforts, Turkey and Azerbaijan, Turkey is by far the most powerful of the two. Would you agree?
And yes, and we feel that the Turkish lobby has been always behind Azerbaijani lobby in counteracting our attempts to deliver truth to the state and academia and all the various circles of the United States society. We feel that, and if previously Turkey has been playing a kind of behind-the-scene player, the role of the behind-the-scene player of everything what is going on in Azerbaijan and around it, now they're absolutely and completely hands-on. They control that country, they control their military, they instigate hatred, they spark the flare-ups on the battlefield, they prevent Azerbaijan from stopping, they push them to go ahead and try to kill every Armenian. So Azerbaijan has gradually aggravated into a proxy, not even a proxy, but also not even a satellite, a tool for Turkey's aggressive expansionism in the region.
We're going to get into that in just a moment. Maybe I'll switch over to Mr. Apkarian. Can you explain from a geopolitical chess standpoint, what is the role of Russia in Israel, in your estimation, as a representative of Armenia? What is the role of Russia in Israel in the conflict between Artsakh and Azerbaijan?
Well, Russia has historical alliance with the Republic of Armenia.
And why? But why is that? Is it because they're both predominantly Christian, historically connected? How would you describe that connection?
Well, because Armenia is in border with Turkey, and Turkey is part of NATO. And the Euro-Asian connectivity, it became more important point for Russia, especially after breakup the Soviet Union. So to allow the Turks to invade that territory and claim more presence, geopolitical presence, it doesn't serve Russia's interests whatsoever. So Armenia was strong enough to create a defense alliance with Russia, number one. Number two, Russia has military presence within the Republic of Armenia. It has a base over there. And there is a military and mutual defense treaty between Russia and the Republic of Armenia, and also with the CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which this morning, as a matter of fact, President Putin indicated that they are true to that alliance and they will fulfill their obligation under CSTO agreement in defense of Republic of Armenia. Now, role of
Mr.
yes,
Apkarian.
yes.
Oh, there you are. There,
yeah.
There we go. I couldn't hear you. Well,
so the role of Israel is very different.
Well,
Israel
before you get to Israel, let's go back to the history of Russia and the Ottoman Empire. My understanding, and please chime in and let me know, is that during the Ottoman Empire, Russia declared itself to be the protector of Orthodox Christians or Christianity in that territory. And so there's a history here that Russia has a strong involvement in Turkish affairs through its Christian population, in Armenia being essentially, it was the first Christian nation ever, that there is this historical Christian connection, even though as the Soviet Empire developed and then later collapsed, it underplayed and undervalued the impact of religion, but you had a significant amount of history that allowed Russia to play a role in this region that was principally based on religion. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that is absolutely fair.
So go on into Israel, totally different animal.
Yeah, Israel's position is totally different. It's all, from my perspective, it is all economically driven in terms of selling arms and armaments to Azerbaijan with an economic perspective. In a sense, recently, Azerbaijan and Israel signed $850 million deal of Azerbaijan buying armaments from Israel with a goal of almost $2 billion additional sale of arms, and especially the drones that you have seen as far as how much destruction they're doing within the civilian areas of Republic of Artsakh. So Israel's motive is much different. It's all economic driven. And as you may have seen recently, Armenia recalled its ambassador from Tel Aviv in protest of Israel selling the cluster bombs and other drones to Azerbaijan for them to attack our civilian population. I think that is absolutely unacceptable. So we are raising our voice very strongly between our church leadership and our president of Republic of Armenia, trying to guide the Israelis to take a very cautious step, just like Canada, for example, yesterday made a very clear declaration as far as they were not going to sell any armaments to Turkey because of their stand in this conflict.
So I had a constituent ask me, it was more of a statement, and the individual says, let me get this straight. You had survivors of the Holocaust who formed the state of Israel. You had the survivors of the Holocaust, of the genocide, that helped create the state of Armenia and Artsakh. But yet you have one state selling armaments to commit genocide against the other. And so it was kind of an interesting and terribly dangerous irony that I had to hear explained to me by this individual.
Yes, Mr. Senator, if I may add to that, I agree with you. If you look at it from this perspective, we are in a bad neighborhood. We're surrounded with enemies around us, right? Israel has a bad neighborhood, surrounded with all Arab countries who they want to throw them into the Mediterranean Sea, right? We both experienced genocide and Holocaust. So we have so much in common. But yet Israel, because of the economic pressure or whatever that might be, which I cannot explain, they're selling cluster bombs and UAVs to Azerbaijan. It's very, very ironic.
Now, in Russia has a history of selling armaments to both countries, and both countries have received arms from a number of countries. So it gets very convoluted very quickly, but I think those are two relationships that are key to understand, Russia and Israel. But the most important is Turkey. Mr. Avetisyan, can I ask you, Turkey's antagonism and dark history with the Armenians is well known, but how has Turkey's antagonism when it comes to Artsakh changed dramatically recently? How has it changed?
It changed, well, you're absolutely right. Turkey has been always present in Azerbaijan, politically, economically, and they were, as I said earlier, behind the scene, sort of more passive player of the processes in and around Azerbaijan. But lately we've seen, especially with President Erdogan in power, we've seen this aggressive expansionist policy towards the entire region, including the South Caucasus. I mean, we are not the only country which is subject to aggression by Turkey. Look at the neighborhood. Look at the neighborhood we share. Well, I know that the Turkish government, when it came to power, has proclaimed the policy of zero problem with neighbors, but it eventually turned into zero neighbor without problems, unfortunately. And this policy is continuing. Azerbaijan with Turkey, and now even they have gone as far as hiring terrorists from Middle East to fight against Artsakh. This is what we call the triple alliance, the triple alliance of apparently rogue states, because the rest of the world is calling for cessation of hostilities and influencing the respective governments to cease the fire. It is only the Turkey and Azerbaijan which are jumping ahead, which are continuing to instigate the anti-Armenian sentiments and continue to very vocally and very openly declare that they're going to try to finish the cause of their forefathers and regain their place in the Caucasus. And we know what it means.
Mr. Avetisyan, you need to explain that one more time. That's an important point. Are you referring to the president of Turkey, Erdogan, declaring that Turkey should complete what their forefathers started against the Armenians? Did he declare that publicly?
We heard the media report him. I don't speak Turkish, but it was translated as, we have to finish the mission of our forefathers and restore our position in the Caucasus.
Interesting. So from my standpoint, being a Greek and being a friend of Armenia and Artsakh, I pay attention, but I am appreciating that Turkey's foreign policy and adventurism has dramatically changed in the last few years, especially since the attempted coup in Istanbul, excuse me. I have seen that Turkey has been bellicose toward Greece, saying that it's going to retake islands. It has transformed one of the most sacred Christian sites, the Holy Hagia Sophia, from a museum into a mosque. We have seen them be very aggressive when it comes to Cyprus in drilling and their naval activities. So when you add that Western component, as well as North Africa through Libya, as well as Syria, how do you make sense that Turkey is literally expanding itself out pushing its tentacles out in so many different ways that would it be fair to say that we have an era of a neo-Ottomanism? I mean, Erdogan looks upon himself as an heir to an Ottoman empire resurgent.
Yes, all you have to do is to look at a couple of media reports and skim through the history of Erdogan's behavior. He never hid his cherishing of the Neo-Ottoman Empire, and he's trying to return to what has been long forgotten. And if you look at the only barrier, if you wish, the only barrier which is on the way of the Turkic nations to reconnect, which will extend from Turkey to all the way to Far East, is Armenians.
That's an important point. You know, I happen to love history. You know, some of you may know that I was a professor for over a decade in international studies over at the law school in Fresno, as well as Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey. Historically, after World War I, Turkey had lost its territories and sought to reclaim the Eastern European territories. Well, then they realized that that wasn't going to be able to be fruitful. So then they turned their sights eastward into a pan-Turkism agenda, uniting all of the people that are commonly denominated by language and culture as all Turk, you know, all the way over to China, if you will. And so Azerbaijan has a very unique place in the Turkish foreign policy, is that it is part of this, you know, this eastward expansion that started, you know, in the early 20th century, now moving into the 21st. So I devolved only because I think it's an interesting piece of history that pan-Turkism agenda was alive and well before, and it seems to be revisiting now in Turkish foreign policy. So I'm going to pose my last couple of questions to Mr. Avetisyan. Is what is the scope of damage that is being experienced in Artsakh, both civilian and military? Can you comment on that?
It's huge. I mean, it's been already, what, 12 days, 11 days that people who were planning to have their normally peaceful Sunday and with their plans, they woke up under missiles flying from Azerbaijan, all the major settlements across the Republic of Artsakh, and they launched indiscriminate fire using long-range missiles, using Smerch, Lora, Uragan, and all the heavy damage.
Major armaments.
And jets, actually, and Turkish F-16s were taking part in bombarding Artsakh. That is also unprecedented for the region. The damage is huge. Can
you repeat that, Mr. Avetisyan? Can you repeat that? That Turkish military are actively involved in Azerbaijan and shot down, if the reports are correct, shot down an Armenian aircraft, Turkish air support shot down.
Turkish airport, which moved to Azerbaijan, I think a month ago for trainings, for military trainings, and part of the armament, including jets, left from Azerbaijan to Turkey, but some part stayed in Azerbaijan apparently for what they were seeing to come, and they were already masterminding attacks on Artsakh. Yes, F-16 was taking place, Turkish, and we have interception of their communication. They have been communicating with power. We do, absolutely. And they don't even hide it.
So you have proof through signal intelligence that was intercepted that a Turkish pilot manning a Turkish plane shot down in Artsakh F-16, is that correct?
Yeah. F-16 was used for bombing the civilian areas in north and south of Artsakh. F-16 was used to shut down the Armenian plane in Armenia proper from territory of Azerbaijan. F-16s and all the military equipment has been actively involved into aggression against Artsakh and Armenia. Probably, eventually, if they succeed in Artsakh, because this is a genocidal plan, they're not going to give up. And also, even more than that, Senator and Mr. Apkarian, I want everyone to realize that this is not, we don't have any illusion about the level of involvement of Turkey, not because only of F-16s. They have taken over the military operations now. Azerbaijani Air Force has been yielded to Turkish command and control a few days ago, which is being implemented from the territory of Turkey. Turkish soldiers and instructors and officers of various levels and various specialties, they have been consulting, training, that was the passive part, and now they're taking part in the actual planning and implementation of the battle and the aggression against Artsakh.
So if someone were to describe this as a conflict between Artsakh and Azerbaijan only, that would be factually inaccurate. It is a conflict involving Turkey as well.
It is a conflict of Artsakh against the criminal triple alliance of Turkey, Azerbaijan, and international terrorist groups from Middle East, which were hired and transported and are being hired and transported to the conflict zone to fight against Armenians of Artsakh.
So Turkey is hiring mercenaries from Syria that have affiliations with terrorist organizations, recruiting them and paying them to come into the territory and fight on behalf of the Azeris against the Armenians. Is that correct?
From north, yeah, absolutely. From northern Syria, which is under control of Turkey, from Libya, parts of Libya under control of Turkish troops and Turkish leadership. And also this fact has been very firmly and unequivocally confirmed by all the major capitals, including Washington, D.C., including Moscow, including France, as the major countries which are dealing with this conflict. They were confirmed by the major intelligence services of the respective countries, and they were confirmed by the most authoritative international media outlets.
Now, the president of France, Macron, had indicated that his intelligence service had supported exactly what you said, that they are, their assessment and their evidence demonstrates and definitively proves that Turkey is hiring mercenaries from Syria to fight against the Armenians. That's a dramatic escalation, isn't it?
As awful as it sounds, that is the reality we're facing now. And this is not the first time we're facing the international terrorism, Senator. I want to say that this is a pattern of behavior of Turkey and Azerbaijan against us. Even in the war of 1991 to 94, they've involved close to 2,500 Afghani Mujahideens to fight against Armenians. But
how many civilians can you estimate, or excuse me, how many Armenians, ethnic Armenians, have been killed, and how many Azeris have been killed in this conflict so far?
It is hard to say. It is hard to say the number of Azeris because the information field in Azerbaijan is absolutely closed, and you will not find an information about one perished soldier. So, in our case, we have information reports every day by our Ministry of Defense. As of now, as far as I remember, the latest report was 320 soldiers perished throughout these days. And we have 23 civilians, as far as I know, and about more than 100 of wounded people.
And, all right, and Azeris, you're not familiar with the number over there?
Nobody is familiar. We have our own estimate, which is well above 3,000 because the attacking force and because of the clearly difference in the ability to wage war between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. But the most important, the strange thing is that even Azerbaijani society doesn't ask questions. They don't care about their sons. And the leadership is very much interested in leaving the bodies on the battlefield because this is how they will accuse us of whatever you want, but they will never say that it was the result of their unwise military campaign, and they just don't care about their bodies. They don't collect them, they don't report to anyone, they want to hide as much information as possible.
So my experience in Artsakh, skirmishes have happened intermittently for years, but this is a dramatic escalation. This is unprecedented in its scope and sophistication that you've seen before. Is that fair to say?
The region hasn't seen this escalation for decades, that's for sure.
Okay.
And it still contains, I'm sorry, Senator, it still contains the threat of becoming even a greater disaster for all the countries in the wider region. And we always say, we share with our colleagues that if somebody in any capital is waiting for this confrontation to turn into a large-scale war to react, this is a large-scale war. This already is taking thousands of lives. During our conversation with you, we had 3 rockets bombing Stepanakert, probably about a mile from here. Yes, and you will hear
just
it
now.
Yes,
just
you
now.
Will hear it when
you've had bombs in Stepanakert launched by Azeris or their proxies.
As we speak, as we were speaking, I saw at least 3 missiles flying to Stepanakert. So this is a large-scale war, and this is a genocidal threat. But that criminal alliance, which is openly hostile towards everything Armenian, and we have seen the demonstrations of that in various areas, and they want to finish what they call their mission of 4 farces. And we hope that the international community will step in, because, and especially we feel that responsibility among the countries which have recognized and condemned the Armenian genocide and the Holocaust. Because the prevention of the genocide is also a responsibility.
For students of history, is that all it took was a bullet in Sarajevo to precipitate World War I. It just takes a little imagination to realize that this area and others around the world, that these seemingly regional conflicts can spiral into global conflicts, especially given the security relationship between Russia and Armenia and the special relationship between Turkey and Azerbaijan. Who knows where Georgia and Iran would play a part. That's a chapter for another day. Let's move
Senator,
on to Mr.
I'm sorry if I may, I'm very sorry. There can be misunderstanding among your listeners that Armenia is fully involved in this fight. Armenia is not. The Defense Army of Artsakh, so we're not bound with any, we don't expect any military or whatever support which is bound by any documentation from any country. We are fighting with the resources we have. Of course, we know that Armenia as a guarantor of security of Artsakh is always there, but now the fight is between Artsakh, backed by volunteers from Armenia, and the 3 of the guys which I mentioned.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Apkarian, I'm going to move on to you with our last couple of questions. How would you describe the U.S. response as well as the diasporan response to the events happening in Artsakh? We've seen photos of demonstrations on freeways in Los Angeles to get international attention brought to bear on this issue. We've seen Fresno have its own demonstrations, and they're organically popping up around the world. Can you, and from your standpoint, describe what the U.S. response is as well as the response by the Armenian diaspora in the United States?
Well, since the conflict started on September 27, diaspora Armenians have been historically united in support of Republic of Artsakh and Republic of Armenia. Now the threat, as Mr. Avetisyan said, has escalated into a major regional conflict that if it's not contained, I agree with Mr. Avetisyan, if it's not contained in a timely fashion, it could turn into destabilizing that region and draw Russia and Turkey in a full-scale war that I do not want to speculate on the magnitude of the disaster that might come forward. Armenians around the world are united. Not only they're demonstrating, but they're voicing their concerns through political channels, humanitarian assistance, and in all aspects of it to raise awareness, just like what you're doing today, Senator. We appreciate your leadership and taking the time to discuss this important issue. So we are working with various different channels within the United States, Congress per se, to pass resolution in the Congress sanctioning Turkey and restraining Turkey and telling Azerbaijan that you are incurring criminal act by sending missiles to civilian territories and killing innocent people. So State Department has been, although active in a say, both sides needs to have a ceasefire. We expect much more out of the State Department in terms of restraining Turkey. Although Mr. Pompeo the other day made a statement by saying third elements should not be part of this conflict without mentioning name of Turkey. But that's not good enough. I think we all know that the Americans sold F-16 was used by Turkish forces to shut down an Armenian fighter jet in Armenia's airspace. And meanwhile, the co-chairs of the Minsk group, Russia, United States, and France, they're just saying, well, they need to stop the war. To be honest with you, that's not good enough. There should be a concrete action restraining Turkey and its involvement in this conflict, because their involvement is escalating and creating an unattainable situation where ceasefire could come into effect.
That's what I'm hearing. Oh, please, Mr. Avetisyan, go.
Add a couple of things. This is a too important topic for us. The United States, by the way, Mr. Apkarian and Senator and all your viewers, I want to thank everyone. We feel that support here in Artsakh in extraordinary situations. We feel that, and we feel the strength. Our diaspora has always been behind the freedom of Artsakh, and we're going to get through this all together. Regarding the United States and possible steps, I singled out a couple of things. The United States is a member of the Minsk group as a mediating vehicle. That is one part of the responsibility your country assumed when it was taking care of the negotiation process. So we expect US to play its role in the Minsk group, which implies non-use of force or non-threat use of force. We want that to be enforced as soon as possible. The second thing is that the United States has proclaimed itself to be the champion of the fight against the international terrorism. We see it here. There are the international terrorists. They're there. Few hundred, if not thousands. We need the US support to help us fight against the international terrorism, because that is the fight. And the third thing, the United States, which has last year recognized on the both legislative levels the Armenian genocide, and as I said, we say that we consider that if a country recognizes and condemns a genocide, part of the responsibility is also to do whatever it takes to prevent another genocide. There is a genocidal threat. I want everyone in every capital of the world to hear this message. There is a real genocidal threat upon us. How to get there? One of the most effective ways, and probably among the very few, is the recognition of Artsakh. That is a political step which will move this from battlefield to political field and save lots of lives and save lots of human sufferings.
That's an important point, Mr. Avetisyan. I have, strong opinions on the relationship that the United States has with Turkey historically and presently. I don't believe that that this relationship is based on common values. I don't believe that we share the same world vision. It has been primarily transactional.
Yep.
And when you have a relationship that is purely transactional, you have to call a spade. And currently, I believe that if we were to walk away from the relationship, that America would not be the worse off for it. In fact, I think we would be better long-term, and removing the military installations from Turkey and possibly moving them over to Crete in Greece would be a step in the right direction. Those are my personal opinions. But as a member of the Senate Committee on Armenia and Artsakh, we have prepared a letter that is being sent to Secretary of State Pompeo, indicating that we believe it's in the best interest of the United States to impose aggressive sanctions on Turkey and Azerbaijan, And I think from our standpoint as the state of California, we've already taken action to recognize the independence and statehood of Artsakh, and further recommend that the U.S. Congress and the President of the United States concur in that recognition that Artsakh is indeed an independent state that is worthy of acknowledgement worldwide. I think you're absolutely right. We have to move in a direction that's going to change the world trajectory, because right now it is mired in regional conflict that is involving proxy players that cannot end well with continued conflict. And the only path forward is recognizing the independence of Artsakh and allowing it the free market, free travel, free trade status that it deserves as an independent nation. And relationships with Turkey and Azerbaijan should take second position to what is morally just and what is historically right. Those are my personal opinions. Of course, I can't speak for all of California. I'm not Governor Newsom, nor the United States, as I'm not the president. But I think we are moving in that direction. We have seen the recognition of the Armenian genocide after 100 years of effort finally come to fruition, and the political will and muscle, I believe, is there. Let me allow this one last opportunity, is that there is legislation in the House, Mr. Apkarian and Mr. Avetisyan. My understanding is that there is legislation in the House of Representatives that is principally designed to sanction Turkey. And we know that the Armenian National Committee and the Assembly, Armenian Assembly, and other groups have been involved in this effort. Do you have any predictions on whether or not this will be successful right now?
It is hard to predict anything, but we really hope that the United States, especially its legislature, will do whatever it takes and whatever it can to constrain Turkish aggressive expansionism again, and to make sure that our shared vision of a peaceful and prosperous South Caucasus is there and there for a long time. We appreciate the efforts, we appreciate the attention. We've been receiving messages from the members of the Congresses and state legislatures, including from you, Senator. Thank you for that. You are heard and very much appreciated in all over Artsakh and among the Armenian people. We are together in this fight. This is not the fight for Artsakh. This is not the fight for Armenia. This is the fight for our worldview. This is a fight for of freedom versus oppression, of peace versus aggression, of small people which wants to live on the land of its ancestors versus a country which is cherishing its whatever it is, pan-Turkic in this sense, ideas at the expense of our safety and at the expense of our lives. And we think that the civilized world and the international community should be joining as one really powerful mechanism to stop Turkey, stop Azerbaijan, and make sure that this kind of tragedies never happen again. In the meantime, our army will do that for the rest of the world.
Mr. Avetisyan, very well said. Mr. Apkarian, do you have any final comments as we end our session today?
Well, Senator, thank you so much for your leadership. And Mr. Avetisyan, thank you for joining this special coverage on this particular issue. Senator, we appreciate your support. This is an important, as Mr. Avetisyan said, this is not just skirmish. This is not a simple war. This needs to be contained, and the aggressors needs to be told that you're playing with fire. You're going to create and destabilize that region. And if we have a destabilized Caucasus, we are going to see much more damage in that region that it will take for a long time to be addressed. But in the meantime, the Minsk group leaders must take decisive action toward the aggressors. We are not the aggressors. It's very clear. We have not launched this war. So Azerbaijan and Turkey must be sanctioned so that they stop these atrocities toward peaceful nation of Republic of Artsakh and Armenia.
Thank you. I'd like to give special thanks to the Honorary Consul of Armenia based in Fresno, and of course the permanent representative of Artsakh, Mr. Avetisyan. Thank you both for taking time out of your schedules, especially you Mr. Avetisyan, calling in from Stepanakert, the capital of Artsakh. And as we've gone through this, you've experienced military shelling of your country. So I appreciate you taking the time, and let's keep in touch, and hopefully when we do this again, there will be an update and things will have improved dramatically. But with that being said, once again, my name is Andreas Borgeas. I'm a California State Senator and serve as a member of the California Senate Committee on Armenia and Artsakh, and it's been my pleasure to moderate this discussion. So thank you both for your time, and those who have been watching and will watch through social media. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.